Command vow. Entry 001. Dash. Theta vessel. Vrian Concordat. Pilgrimage. Frigate Vesteral. Designation. High Arbitant of the Thought-Bound Flame. Commander Cyrix Ulcairn. Current quadrant. Veiled Orphan Sector, bordering the unmarked divide. They said no lights should ever be lit in the Orphan Sector. No scans, no probes, no names. The stars here did not remember their birth. The gravity wells spun wrong. Ghost orbits swallowed time like rot. Swallows breath. Even light curved away in shame. And yet, they came. The Vesteral, not a warship, but a pilgrimage frigate, shimmered through folded tide at half-wake, its engines humming with cloistered intention. Not a ship of conquest, no. Concordat vessels were not permitted to carry weaponry beyond ceremonial plasma lattice blades, their edges ritually dulled after the Uldar repeal. Commander Cyrix Ulcairn did not believe in weapons anyway, but he had been sent here to find one, or the memory of one. Breach complete, sang the signal priest, her 3 tongues flickering in synchrony. We float upon the no place. The coordinates match the forbidden hymn. Cyrix stood rigid within the sanctum chamber, spine sheathed in blessed glass thread, 6 eyes closed. His breathing was shallow, controlled. Like all arbitants, he had trained his body to respect proximity to dread. "Anchor the Vestalum thrums," he ordered, his voice measured and dusted with rite. "We do not drift blind into old sins." A soft chime followed, ritual compliance. He opened his leftmost eye first. Always the leftmost. Tradition demanded that sorrow be seen before hope. Before him, the chamber's viewing cradle unfolded in slow arcs of blue gold. And there, floating just beyond reality's edge, it waited. Not a planet, not a vessel, not a station. Just a shape. Vague, angular, orbiting nothing. It was black, but not lightless. Rather, it held light captive, choking it into stillness. Every sensor's attempt to define its perimeter stuttered and returned error glyphs. Cyrix bowed his head. They had found it. The unshaped remnant. Human origin. Pre-prescription. Unclaimed by any bloodline. "Bring forth the oath mirror," he whispered. A ceremonial archivist glided forward, unfurling a prism of thought glass. Cyrix's reflection shimmered within it, his expression taut with ancestral grief. "I, Cyrix Ulcairn, son of the second evacuation, bearer of the law-branded flame, do hereby violate the 3rd and 4th edicts by order of the Synod." He paused. He felt the ship listen. "And I do so not in pursuit of salvation," he said, "but to confirm the cage still holds." The signal priest bowed. "Echo received," the crew chanted softly. They were not meant to return. They were not meant to return. They were not meant to return. Cultural record. Buried memory, redacted. They ended the scourging war in one breath. They didn't win. They ended it. But when we asked what they fought, they told us only this: if we name it, it remembers us. All records of the human diaspora beyond the inner halo ceased within 5 generations. They didn't flee. They sealed themselves away. "Status," Cyrix intoned. "Ritual complete." The chamber flickered to life. "Object remains dormant," said the scan whisperer. "No emissions, no pulse. Internal mass unknown. Form stable across gravitational shears." Another voice from the ship's psalmist. "It sings nothing. It listens." Cyrix's breath caught. That matched the old records. Humanity's last design did not speak. It listened, waited, and only woke when the right question was asked. "Begin perimeter walk," he ordered. A choir of mentalists fed thought into the ship's systems, navigating gentle orbits around the object. never too close. The sacred geometry of approach had been transcribed by the first deserters of the Bastion War. Those who came back changed. It was never to be violated. "Refracted scans returning null again," whispered the scan whisperer. "Mass impossible. Volume shifting. It does not want to be measured." "Does it see us?" Syrinx asked it like a child asking if the monster under the bed might be real after all. The room was quiet. Then, "Yes," said the ship's psalmist. "How do you know?" A pause. Then the answer that chilled every frill and gland in Syrinx's body. "Because it just made room." The ship's lights dimmed, not out of failure, out of deference. The Vestiral's memory core dropped into passive mode, autonomously. The crew didn't move. No one chanted. No one prayed. Because this wasn't defiance. This was recognition. The object, no, the Ark, was responding. With silence. With pause. With grief? Syrinx felt it in his breath. Thick, heavy, like a weight pressing against time. "They know we're here," he said quietly. He turned back to the reflection in the oath mirror and saw, for the first time, a flicker behind his own eyes. Not light, not shadow. Just a presence, a witness. And somewhere inside the black hull of that drifting relic, something shifted. Not a weapon, not a human. Just the memory of a hand that once refused to strike again, but would, if asked. Or worse, if unasked. No pulse, no beacon, no language. And yet the Ark's shape continued to change, not visibly, not by design or mechanical shift, but in perception. Every time Syrinx returned his gaze to it, it was different. A slant of hull extended too far, a dorsal arc that hadn't existed moments ago. At first, he blamed sensor lag. Then he stopped blaming. Because it wasn't failing. It was adjusting. It was reacting. "Concordant mass yield still reads contradictory," reported the scan whisperer, but her voice was thin, thready. "Inert matter mapped across a variable interior. The space within exceeds the space without." Syrinx narrowed his breath. "Impossible," he said, more as habit than defiance. "Object may be superfolded," she added, "or aware that it is being measured." That line lingered far too long in the chamber's air. Aware, not active, not armed, just watching itself be watched. "Cease metric analysis," Syrinx commanded. "Switch to reverent inquiry." The crew bowed heads in unison. Sensors were not shut down. That would violate observation doctrine. But their intent was altered. In Concordat culture, inquiry was spiritual. You did not measure a divine relic. You invited it to reveal itself. Sometimes it did. Most times, it didn't. The object abloud. Without warning, the chamber screens bloomed. The view did not show the exterior. It showed the interior, but not through scan, through perspective. The deck froze. The crew inhaled as one. They were inside the Ark now, or rather, it was showing them what was within. A single corridor, cold, featureless. Walls of black material that rippled like water, yet held shape like steel. Lightless, but visible. Not illumination, but recall. "It's not current footage," the ship's psalmist whispered. "This is memory." Syrinx stepped forward, hesitant. "Why show us?" No answer. Just another shift. A chamber appeared. Circular. Vast. Scored with etchings in no known script. Along its inner ring sat 13 empty chairs, and one at the center occupied. Not by a human, by a shrouded form. Silhouetted. Still. Not in command. Not restrained. Waiting. Then, movement. The figure raised its head. Only once. And in that gesture, the viewing field broke. The chamber screens flickered off. The ship's internal glow returned. Breath and pulse resumed. But nothing was said, because they had all seen it. Not a weapon. Not a custodian. Still. And burdened. Syrinx could barely keep his limbs from trembling. His neural ridge flared against the sanctum helm. "What do the old hymns say?" he asked the scion memorialist, voice ragged. The elder archivist, cloaked in biocloth memory wrap, stepped forward, eyes veiled in data film. She spoke without inflection. At the dusk of the fifth accord, the humans swore a binding exile. They refused all tongues. They refused all alliances. They gave one warning. We will not answer, unless the question is death. The chamber darkened again. Another vision. This time, not from the Ark, from their own ship. Systems shutting down, one by one. Sanctum doors failed. Oxygen modulation faltered. No alerts triggered. Because nothing was wrong. It was intentional. "What's happening?" Syrinx asked, his voice rising. The scan whisperer trembled. I think we asked." "Asked what?" The vision resumed. Now, another room. Colder, smaller, walls scorched, and in the center, a box. Simple, featureless. But every part of the crew leaned back instinctively. Some wept. Some excreted glandular fear pheromones involuntarily, because they knew, even without knowing. "That's it," Syrinx whispered. He didn't know what it was, but the moment he saw the box, the memory of a dozen star maps bled into his mind. Of voided sectors, sealed rift chambers, blacklisted planets never explained. The box came with instructions. Don't open it. Don't discard it. Don't study it. Just pray no one ever needs to knock. Syrinx's voice was hollow. "This is not a prison." Heliox, pale and rigid, looked up. "It's a signal." He swallowed. "Not to humanity." He turned, eyes wide with ancestral horror. "To the thing they fought." The chamber darkened again. No sound. Just a single glyph appeared on every wall. Not in Concordat script, but older. Far older. Human. It read, "If you found this, you are out of time." "Containment protocols!" Syrinx barked. But no one moved. There was no field to raise, no system to wall off, because the breach hadn't come through their hull. It had come through their understanding. The vision of the box still lingered in their minds, not as an image on a screen, but as a residue in their perception. They couldn't look away, because it was still there, even with their eyes closed. "Shut down the psionic array," Syrinx ordered. "Cut every channel." But the ship's psalmist merely stood still, trembling. "It's not transmitting, Commander," she whispered. "It's remembering through us." The chamber dimmed again, but now it was not the Ark projecting. It was the Vesteral. Syrinx watched in frozen horror as the ship's own memory veil activated without command. The view shifted, their current position, current moment. But now, different. Because someone else stood on the bridge. Not a human, not a construct, a silhouette. The same figure from the Ark, the one who had raised its head, now closer, more defined, but never fully seen. It wore no armor, carried no blade, made no threat. And yet every crew member dropped to their knees, not out of reverence, but survival instinct, a defense response written into their very marrow, because every part of them knew this resonance could unmake stars, and chose not to. The signal priest began to weep, her tongue stuttering incoherent chants. The oath mirror cracked. Syrinx stood alone. His command garb, ceremonial glass thread, and blessed sigil plate felt like costume, like a child wearing the skin of a martyr. The figure stepped forward, not in the vision, but in their minds. And then it spoke, not in voice, not in sound, but in certainty. "You should not have come here." Syrinx staggered. The phrase echoed through every crew member at once, layered in memory, translated through instinct. "We made the exile for your sake, not because we feared death, but because we feared what we would become to prevent it." The scan whisperer collapsed, convulsing. Blood from her inner frill glands began to leak down her throat. Not violence. Overload. Syrinx stepped forward. "I am Syrinx ul Cairn," he said, barely above a whisper, "arbitant of the Concordat flame. My people sought only confirmation." A pause. Then, "You sought a cage, but what you found is a promise." The image shifted again. Now a battlefield. Vast. Broken. The air thick with red mist. No bodies, just ash. No ships, just craters. And in the center, a single structure. The box, still sealed, unopened, untouched. "This is what we did not use," the voice said. "This is what we left behind, so we would never become monsters again. And now you ask us to wake." Syrinx shook his head. "We ask nothing. We came only to observe. You came with scanners. You came with intent. You named us again. And the universe remembers what was buried." There was a low hum now. The Ark was no longer dormant. Its outer shell began to shimmer, slowly, like veins of lightning beneath stone. "Spinal systems flaring," muttered Heliox, barely conscious. "No energy draw, no heat bloom, just resonance." "We buried ourselves," the voice continued, "because we knew what we were capable of. And we hoped you would forget. We hoped no one would need the knife again." Syrinx tried to step forward, but his legs would not obey. "Why show us this?" he asked. "Why respond at all?" "Because you came in silence. And we were listening." The silhouette took one more step. Syrinx fell to his knees. "We do not hate you," the voice said, "but you have reminded us." Then, the figure raised its hand, not in threat, not in attack, but in solemn gesture, an ancient human symbol. One Syrinx had only seen once, in a forbidden archive. 2 fingers, pressed to temple, a gesture of farewell, a gesture of memory. Then the voice said, "You never understood. We were not trying to win the last war. We were trying to lose only once." The lights returned. The vision ended. The bridge of the Vestral was intact. The crew was alive. But no one stood. No one breathed with rhythm. Syrinx forced himself upright. He looked at the data logs. All gone. Every record, every scan, every echo, erased. The ship had no memory of what had just happened. Only the crew did. Only their minds. And that, Syrinx realized, was the point. The voice had shown mercy, and in doing so, had delivered a burden. He turned to the still silent ark. No longer did it look like a relic. Now it looked like a warning etched in patience, a monument to restraint, to control, to the terrifying beauty of power held in check by sorrow. He looked into the void and understood. The humans had not been erased. They had volunteered for erasure, not because they were defeated, but because they had won far too well. And no one, not even themselves, could be trusted with the aftermath. The Vestiral drifted in silence. No commands were issued. No systems engaged. The crew had become monks in the aftermath of revelation, huddled in corners, reciting breath prayers from the earliest core hymns, not for clarity, but to prevent themselves from shattering. Cyrix sat alone in the communion pit of the sanctum, the heart of the bridge, staring at nothing. His thoughts pulsed in circles. They didn't speak to us. They remembered through us. And what they showed us wasn't a threat. It was a mirror, and they had only lifted a corner of the cloth. "Report," he croaked, though none was needed. Still, Heliox obeyed, barely upright, his eye frills twitching. "I dug past the standard scans, into the substrate layer." Cyrix looked up. "You accessed the ark's substrate?" "No," Heliox whispered. "Ours." Cyrix blinked. Heliox's voice cracked. "The ship isn't locked down. It's complying." "Complying with what?" Heliox raised a trembling limb. "With them." Cyrix stared at him, then at the consoles. Clean, functional, unblemished. Except now, every status screen bore a single glyph, flickering in low phase. "Access granted." "It didn't override our systems," Heliox said. "It just asked, and we said yes." He looked haunted. "Because some part of us wants to understand." Cyrix rose slowly. "Then show me." Heliox obeyed. He brought up a schematic, not of their ship, of the ark. It unfolded in layered transparency. First the outer hull, then the containment membrane, then the internal strata, and finally, the core. Cyrix inhaled. "Is that a person?" "No, not anymore." In the center of the ark floated what could only be described as remnant biology. Strands of matter woven with code, pulses of suspended cognition looped through a stasis field engineered to prevent growth. Not to preserve, to delay. "This isn't a sleeper pod," Heliox whispered. "It's a lock." A pause. On what? The last human. Cyrix turned sharply. Heliox clarified. Not the last alive. The last permitted. The others chose stasis, chose dispersal, chose silence. He stepped back from the screen. This one chose remembrance. The figure's shape, barely visible, more suggestion than form, pulsed with slow, aching rhythm. Alive, not conscious, but ready, waiting. And the field around it, a web of paradox computation. Every cycle processed not in time, but in intention. "If we wake it," Heliox murmured, "it won't be them that come back." He turned to Cyrix. "It will be what they were afraid of becoming." The schematic shifted again, autonomously. Now it showed something else. A map, not spatial, conceptual. Events, conflicts, timelines, lines marked Event Horizon Breach, Red Spiral Collapse, Coral Extinctions, all leading to one central point, not labeled, just pulsing. "Pattern recognition predictive matrix," Heliox said. "It's forecasting collapse events." Cyrix whispered. "A war?" "No," Heliox looked pale. A return. Of what, he did not say. He didn't have to. Because every path, every war, ended not with a victor, but with them. With this. The Ark wasn't waiting to strike. It was waiting to be asked to. They swore an oath, Syrinx murmured, to never become that again. They locked it all away, in memory, in flesh, in silence. And then they built this. He turned to Heliox. Is it sentient? No. Conscious? Not unless we say the words. Syrinx stepped back from the screen. The words. They had been burned into every species' history since the dissolution. We do not answer, unless the question is death. He looked at the core again. What kind of answer burns brighter than extinction? What kind of being lets itself be erased to spare its enemies, and still leaves behind a key? Then, the ship's systems flickered. Not the Vestirals. The Ark. The outer hull began to glow faintly. Not power, not shields, just presence. Across its surface, lines lit in cold violet, concentric rings like scars. Glyphs neither alien nor human. And at its center, a phrase, not shown, given. It appeared in Syrinx's mind like a whisper in childhood, like something he'd forgotten deliberately. Emergency authorization. Class epitaph. Directive. By request only. And beneath it, do you wish to remember what we became? Syrinx's breath stopped. The ship didn't move. The crew didn't speak. But in that moment, every mind aboard the Vestiral felt the same pressure. A choice. A single question from a civilization that had buried itself in moral agony, that had fled the temptation of its own strength. Do you wish to remember what we became? Syrinx turned away from the screen. No, he whispered. We do not. Heliox nodded once. Then we leave? Syrinx looked at the Ark, still silent, still merciful, and felt its patience, its restraint. Yes, he said, while we still understand what that word means. The Vestiral turned slowly, folding its path away from the Ark without propulsion or chant. No victory was declared, no record marked. It was not retreat. It was withdrawal, the way one steps back from a flame that does not burn, yet promises to, if looked at too long. Syrinx stood alone in the communion chamber. His crew had fallen into sacred silence. Not imposed, chosen. Even the signal priest had removed her tongues and sealed them in mourning glass. No words would carry forward from this. Only memory, only the burden. He opened the oath mirror again. It did not reflect. It recorded. Final entry, he whispered, to be sealed under prescription flame, a beat. I am Syrinx Ulcairn, High Arbitant of the Thought-Bound Flame. This log is not a report. It is a confession. He looked at the mirror and for the first time saw himself clearly. Not a commander, a witness. We found the human Ark. It did not speak. It did not fight. It did not flee. It remembered. He paused, and for a moment he felt a weight in his chest. Not pain, not grief. Gratitude, that it had let them leave. We once believed the humans vanished in fear, he said slowly. But what we found was not fear. It was shame. He swallowed. They did not lose the war. They walked away from it, and from themselves. They locked their fury in flesh and sealed it in silence, not because they were weak, but because they could no longer trust their own survival instinct. He exhaled, unsteady, and now they wait, Not for redemption, not for return, just for one moment. He closed his eyes. When someone, somewhere, becomes desperate enough to ask them to come back. The oath mirror sealed the record. The chamber lights dimmed. Syrinx didn't move, because he felt it then. A presence. Not in the ship, not in the ark. In him. A thought. Not his own. You made the right choice. A whisper of something impossibly old. A voice shaped like memory. Not command. Not threat. Just relief. Thank you for letting us stay forgotten. In the inner circles of the Concordat High Synod, Syrinx's mission was officially declared a null discovery. No ark was found, no anomaly, no record retained. A failed survey, a bureaucratic silence. Yet something shifted in the inner edicts, unspoken. Ships stopped patrolling the orphan sector. No new probes were launched, and the hymns sung at funerals began to change, subtly, adding a final verse. When the silence speaks, we close our eyes. When the light returns, we pray it passes. No one dared revisit the site. No one dared to ask, because to ask was to remember, and to remember was to summon. They didn't leave because they lost. They left because they were the only ones who knew what it would cost to win again.